Hey, good afternoon, everybody. This is Ryan again with another HM1 in 2021. Today we are going over Opnav instruction 5100.19 Foxtrot. So right there, bam, Opnav instruction 5100.19 Foxtrot. And that is the Navy Safety and Occupational Health Program Manual for Forces Afloat. So I like to think just OSHA afloat, 5100.19 Foxtrot. I think there's one more in my series of this instruction videos. Today, this one's going to be a little dry. You can already see it has 16 pages before it hits the references, so this one's pretty long. We're going to be going over Bravo 2, which is heat stress, which surprised me. Let me scroll down to it in chat. Which surprised me when I read through this on my first run through, which I normally do before I make these videos. I was kind of surprised how this instruction didn't really have anything to do with actual heat stress, heat stroke casualties, what to do. This instruction was definitely a lot more geared towards like the engineering aspect, which I guess that's kind of what this instruction is. That's why it's a 5,000 series instead of a 6,000 series. It definitely is focused more on the engineering side as opposed to the medical side. A lot of this instruction from what I saw is kind of like defining terms and looking at like safety ranges for different types of thermometers. I'm not sure if I've ever seen any of that stuff on the exam before, so for this one I'm probably not going to pay as much attention to it as I did some of the other ones just because it's such a long instruction. But I'll point out what I think may be important, and we're just going to move on because there are so many other videos I need to do before this March exam. I really don't have the time to go through one this chunky because I could spend 2 weeks reading this one chapter, and in that time I could read probably 5 or 6 others. So at this point in the game, that's a cool tip for anyone. You got to be tactical on like what you're studying for the realistic time zone. Especially because I'm starting up school again next week, so I'm not going to have time to read one instruction multiple times. But do it once, do my best, and I'm going to keep rolling. Maybe next cycle, if I don't make it in March and September, I plan on taking off school, so I'm going to have nothing but time. So I'll probably make a lot more videos and review my old ones. But I think I just got sidetracked, so let's go back on the section B2. Heat stress. So right off the bat, heat stress defined. Any combination of air temps, thermal radiation, humidity, airflow, work order, health conditions that may stress the body as it attempts to regulate body temperature. Really fancy way of saying anything that could heat your body up could cause heat stress. Ships are giant floating metal tins, so you can get really hot in those. It also goes on to say that being in a cool environment, so going from hot to cool, can help lessen those heat stress symptoms, and like it's really important to get someone to scene right away. Here are some terms that I'm probably gonna have to scroll up to this one a couple times. So DB, dry bulb, WB, wet bulb, GT, globe temperature reading. So that's that WBGT, black flag, green flag, stuff like that. And that has a special index, and yeah, the index is the DB, WB, and GT. The other one is the automatic heat stress system, which I've never heard of that, but it's referred to many times in this instruction as the AHSS, so the automatic heat stress system, and wet bulb globe temperature. So 2 types of way of measuring heat. Fell curves get mentioned a lot, which I actually missed what the definition was, but that's why you read things multiple times. So FEL stands for physiological heat exposure limit. So basically, how much time can you be in how hot of an environment? This instruction gets really deep into like what type of working areas can be what type of FEL curve. I think that's way overboard on what I could be studying, so I'm not going to spend a lot of effort on it. But if there was anything big on this instruction, it'd probably be those FEL curves, but there are so many of them, it would be unrealistic for me to try to memorize that in the time that we got. Let's see. There's something here about heat acclimatization. There we go. So heat acclimatization, any of you guys that have been to tropical islands like Okinawa, Guam, anywhere really, really hot, you got to acclimate. So like there's a certain time where if you check in, you don't have to do the PRT because your body needs to acclimate. So this instruction defines acclimatization as 3 weeks or more. However, most of that happens in the first week. So if the advancement exam question is how long is a standard heat acclimatization period? Boom, 3 weeks. Responsibilities are kind of obvious. CO, review the heat stress stuff. Actually, that one to me is not obvious. So one, establish and enforce the policy. COs always establish and enforce policies. Review and initial daily heat stress levels. So, reduce stay times. So reduced stay time is referred to a lot in this instruction. That basically means GTFO of the really hot area. You're not allowed to be here as long as you usually will, usually because the area got hotter than they thought. So you conduct an inquiry if there's any heat injuries. So they got to make sure that things are set up. Report to ISIC, whoever that is, material deficiencies. So if we don't have the equipment, and make sure that there are 2 portable WBGTs in case the IH or the safety people got to do their surveys. So safety officer, they make sure that heat injuries are reported correctly. I thought that was interesting. So it is not medical. It is safety who reports heat stress injuries. So I would say that's probably an important concept to understand because medical usually reports injuries. So really kind of drill that one home because that's a little different than usual. Heat stress get reported by the safety officer. And just like many, many other instructions, the program is reviewed annually by safety. So let's look at the medical department. They review the surveys, look for any inaccuracies. They look at any of those reduced exposure time and what was done about it. They maintain originals of all heat stress surveys for 1 year. So keep note of that one. The medical department keeps all heat stress surveys for a year. They do training, a lot of other obvious corpsman stuff. Engineering officer makes sure that the DB thermometers are installed. Again, DB dry bulb, if I'm not mistaken. Where is it at? Yep, dry bulb. So either DB dry bulb or WB wet bulb. So they make sure that those dry bulb thermometers are installed. They have engineering personnel do the heat stress surveys. So again, safety reports, engineering surveys. Let's see. So assign and qualify supervisors that review those dry bulb temps or access the other one, the automated health something or other, the AHSS. So the bosses do that. Let's see. Engineering also records all heat stress related deficiency on the CSMP and TSIMs. I'm not sure what those are. They aren't defined in this instruction anywhere else. So from what I just kind of thinking about studying and speculating, if there's a footnote on instruction that has words I don't mean, it's probably likely from somewhere else. And if that chapter isn't specifically referenced, it's probably not super important. But now that I said that, both of those are going to be questions. So let's see, what does supply do? If I was to guess supply, make sure we have what we need. Let's see. Here's one. So division officer reviews the space temperature logs weekly. I know that's a little different than some of the other stuff, but what helps me think about the DIVO is it's their people working in the space, so it makes sense that whoever's in charge of the people is the one reviewing the temperature logs weekly to make sure that they're sending personnel places where they'll be safe. They can also assign department personnel to conduct those heat surveys. Let's see. DIVOs, again, limit personnel heat exposure. Makes sense. Heat stress surveyors, got to make sure they're trained. All hand stuff is make sure you know what you're doing. Let's see. So this next section is all about the actual monitoring and surveying. There's the WBGT. There's a formula on how you could do it, but I don't think that's super important. Anyways, even if it was, that is not a formula I think I would remember. So maybe 0.1 dB, 0.2 GT, 0.7 WB. I don't know. Maybe I'll do like a flashcard review of that closer to the exam. And then that's all additive. Heat stress monitoring. But again, the WBGT determines the amount of time it is safe to work in a certain spot. So WBGT is probably important to know. If nothing else, even if you don't remember the formula, just know that that is how they determine how long you can work in a hot area. Heat stress monitor. So look, there's a number range. So a hanging dB thermometer ranges from 0 to 150. And it needs to be permanently mounted in watch and workstations where heat stress conditions may exist. So to me, that kind of makes a lot of sense. So if I know it's an area that could get really, really hot, maybe I'll probably have a thermometer so I can let people know if it gets too hot, and then we're monitoring, we're making sure it's safe for people. See, and heat stress is part of the industrial hygiene survey, which makes sense. Here's some more. So placement of those dry bulb thermometers. They can be in ventilation, but they need to be 2 feet away from any supply ventilation terminal or opening. So 2 feet away. Let's see, that's the only big one I see. Here's the numbers. Now the 5 degrees Fahrenheit shows up a lot in this instruction. So like if any test exam asks like if there's a difference between a dB thermometer and dB temperature measured with the WBGT, like that's that portable one that there needs to be 2 of in a command. If the difference is 5, that means that there is something wrong with that dB thermometer and it needs to be not calibrated, but if it's found inaccurate, it probably needs to be replaced. So it says right here that those dB bulbs cannot be calibrated, so do not require calibration. So if it doesn't work, you have to replace it, which makes sense. So just think if there's 5 degree difference, there's something wrong with the one hanging in the space. It's not reflective, and that can be really dangerous if you have a temperature that's not actually telling people how hot or cold an area may be. B26. So here's that automatic something or other. Oh man, my acronyms are not good today. Maybe in the future I'll write down a sticky note so I don't have to keep scrolling up. So AHSS, again, automated heat stress system. Boom, automated heat stress system. They're mounted so they indicate the most accurate representation for where workers or watch spend the majority of time. So basically that automatic heat stress system needs to be posted up where the people are. So it's not super important for me to know where the top right corner of a wall would be if no one works there. Because again, the whole point of heat stress is for people. So I need to be measuring where the people are. The one number here is there can be ventilation near the AHSS, but that ventilation cannot exceed 600 feet per minute. Honestly, I don't think I've ever seen feet per minute, so I don't know if 600 feet per minute is a lot or not. I don't know what that is compared to normal aircon. But it does say the AHSS is positioned vertically. The sensor is at the top of the unit, and there needs to be a clearance of 4 inches above the sensors and 6 inches on the right side. My guess is maybe there's a fan or something on the right side, kind of like a computer. So I think 4 inches above, 6 inches to the right. So 4 and 6. 4, 6, 600. The 3 numbers you got to remember for the AHSS. Let's see, dry bulb temperature. So the ship must record those dry bulb when you're underway or when any other potential heat stress conditions could exist, such as when you're in port. They give some examples of spaces which all seem really hot. Machinery, fire room, engine, machinery, diesel, laundry, anywhere that could get hot. and it gives you like how often those temperatures need to be read. So if the dry bulb temperature is 85 or below, every 4 hours. If it's 85 or above, which to me seems pretty hot, every hour. And if it's a temporary facility, it's 85 or above during repair or maintenance operations. So a little bit different between temporary and fixed. Temperature recording. Let me flip over my page. So look at that. It goes on your little deck log. Prepared paper log form or in a green logbook and reviewed by the supervisor. And those logs are kept for 1 year. So again, just like the program is inspected annually, the logs are kept for a year. And then here's some other temperatures. So if the dry bulb temperature ever goes over 100 in a work length of 4 hours or less, or 90 in greater than 4 hours, or 85 in the scullery, the space supervisor must circle and read the reading and immediately notify the watch. So there's these thresholds that in that logbook, if the supervisor sees that they hit those temperatures, they have to circle it. So again, that was 100 for 4 or less, 90 for 4 or more, 85 in the scullery. So think 4, more than 4, scullery. And I like to think about that as the hottest one you can spend the most time in. Or the hottest one you spend the least time. So if it's hot, 4 hours or less, 10 degrees less than that, it can be more than 4 hours, or 85 in the scullery. Let's see. Here's some operating range for the AHSS and the wet bulb global thermometer. So that's 65 to 150. Relative humidity for the AHSS is 10% to 95%. If you use it outside of that range, the temperature might not be accurate. So it really can't work for cold, and it can't work for super hot. But if you're in an area over 150 degrees, you're probably pretty screwed anyways. Like that's mind-bogglingly hot. Measurement techniques. There's nothing super important that I saw there. Here you go. Measurement techniques. Nope, I think I went farther than my notes. So the heat stress surveyor determines heat conditions. Oh, that's not what I'm looking at. Where did I go? There we go. So here's a time limit. So the heat stress surveyor must conduct the first wet bulb globe thermometer measurement in the workspace after the meter has been in space for 10 minutes. So basically, you have to let it sit for 10, so like the temperature can check in and make sure it's at the right temperature. After you move it from one site to another, you only got to wait 5 minutes. So just think 10 minutes to set it up, 5 minutes to move and check other areas of the room. And the 0.1 Fahrenheit is what you're looking for and what you're waiting for that to stay at. So again, 10 to set up, 5 to move. Here's a form. Opnav instruction 5100/17 heat monitoring. I can't think of a good way to remember 17 for heat stress. So if anyone can think of a cool acronym or ditty to remember that. But Opnav 5100/17 heat stress monitoring sheet. If nothing else, realize that the Opnav form number is the same as the instruction SSIC. So it's 5100, 5100. So instead of the decimal, there's a slash. I'm starting to realize as I'm like reading a lot of these instructions, the form numbers tend to correspond with what the instruction number is pretty often in a lot of these. Like that's something I've never noticed before, but something to look out for. I don't know how often that turns up, but I know at least in a lot of these OC health manuals I've been reading, the forms tend to be pretty similar to the instruction number. So cool little way, if you're trying to guess, just pick what looks like it would be right. Like 5100 is the OC health stuff. Hey man, heat stress seems like an OC health thing. But I digress. So stuff you report, date and time of survey, kind of obvious. Time and temp, time the measurement was taken, what was the hanging temp. Here's that 5 degrees again. So look, it came up multiple times in the instruction. So survey, if there's a 5-degree difference, that means the thermometer is not representative of the temperature of the workstation. So that means we need to replace it. So there's that heat sheet, the 5100/17. Let's get the exact, which I believe is a heat stress monitoring sheet. Goes to medical, which makes sense because they're going to be the ones looking at heat stress, especially if there's any injuries. And the MDR is going to look at any of those. And they're also going to check if there's any reduced fail time. So if people can't stay there, as long as they thought they'd be able to. Space surveys. So either, again, these are the two measurements we've been talking about the entire instruction. So the ships must conduct a survey of spaces for heat stress using either the wet globe or the automatic heat stress system. Here's those spells I was talking about. They're kind of confusing, but I'm noticing a similarity in the numbers. So there's the, again, this was said earlier. This is like the hot range that you'd have to report. So just remember your fells. So 100 degrees, 4 hours or less. 90 degrees, greater than 4 hours. Scullery, fel 4 through 6. So basically the really, really hot areas, the really, really cold areas, like how hot can this area get before you got to worry. Let's see, there's some notes. See. So the readings are not required for spaces that are not normally manned for watch. So a lot of the heat stress areas is people need to be working there. So if someone only goes in the room for like 15 minutes, you don't need to take the wet bulb global thermometer temperature. And if the space temperature is less than 65, you don't need to do a heat stress. I mean, one reason is it's super cold at 65. The other is that the meter is not even accurate down there. So it's kind of a waste of time to even do. See. So here's another timeline. So drill set exceeds 3 hours, which I'm trying to find out like grammatically what this falls under. Because it doesn't really, it just says prior to conducting engineering casualty control drills if the drill set exceeds 3 hours. And that. But it's weird because it's an if statement, but then there's no then. So I don't know what this instruction is trying to tell me right now. It's grammatically confusing. So we'll just 3 hours drill set. It means something, but I don't understand it. Maybe I'll reread it a little bit later to try to figure that part out. Let's see. Some more stuff. See, a lot of this is kind of stuff that repeats. B1 was the next note I had. So follow-on surveys where the wet bulb and dry bulb temperatures are not monitored and recorded each hour. The survey are done at the end of the watch or as indicated. So follow-on surveys, end of the watch. Here's another number. So follow-on surveys are not required unless the dry bulb temperature increases by 5 degrees Fahrenheit or more, or the wet bulb increases by 3 or more from the previous survey. So two things to remember. So dry bulb can increase by 5, wet bulb can increase by 3. Don't know a lot about temperature, so to be honest, I got to learn more about my WBGT in general. But how I'm rating that is like wet heat because it's super humid and muggy. It doesn't have to be as hot to be as miserable as dry heat would be. So that's how I kind of conceptualize that dry bulb is 5 and the wet bulb is 3. We got that. see D1. So recovery time, if someone reached that limit, it's the supervisor's responsibility to reduce the stay time, unless it's an operational emergency. So for example, if we're under fire, yeah, we don't have time to have anyone move. So an area that is considered to be cold enough to have that recovery is 80 degrees or less, which is not super cold, but it's way colder than 90, 100. So just think physiological recovery from a heat stress is 80 degrees Fahrenheit or less. So, and it gives some more, which I think are seemingly obvious. So preferably for the recovery, it's in an air-conditioned area. Length of recovery time must be equal to twice the exposure time or 4 hours, whichever is less. So it's really important to find out how long was this person exposed to that heat. Was it greater than 4 hours? If not, it'll be less than, but if it's any greater than the 4 hours is the maximum they gotta wait. So again, for those it's less. So either twice the exposure time or 4 hours, whichever is less. All right, recommendations for working in heat stress. We're corpsmen, we're told to tell everyone to push water. So drink more water than satisfies thirst, as I'm kind of drinking water right now, but not more than 1.5 liters per hour. So don't wait till you're thirsty. Keep hydrated. I mean, I think everyone could tell you that. Trying to avoid heat stress, drink a lot of water. But just remember, it's 1.5 liters per hour. Eat your 3 meals. Sleep 6 hours of rest. Don't take salt unless the medical tells you to, or salt tablets. Limit coffee. Good luck. And there's also cooling vests that you can take. So here's the FEL. So again, that's that kind of exposure limit for heat. Core temperature may rise to 102.2 depending on where you're at or where you're going. But will return to normal with appropriate recovery time. So if someone's really hot, really working, their temperature could get up to 102.2, but they need to cool down with exposure time. Basically, FEL is like, from what I'm reading this, is it's a mathematical equation to find out how hot can someone be and still be able to be safely taken out. How long can they be in that heat? So it's a way to kind of like manage that risk of how hot can you safely really get, and at what point do we need to take you back? Let's see. So here we go. So FEL curves are normal, healthy personnel. So if anyone's like sick, they got stuff going on, medical issues, this FEL curve may be a little too much time. So the FEL curve assumes that the person is in good health. It also assumes that they had recovery time from previous heat stress. So 2 hours for every 1 hour. That's another way of saying earlier in the instruction twice the amount of time, or 4 hours maximum. Cotton 35%. FEL curves are in the appendix. I think this is one of the few instructions where I didn't find the appendix very useful. Let's see. So review the health of your workers, make sure they're doing all right. So if someone has a heat stroke, the stay time for all other staff must be reduced and put in the next level of risk. So if there's one heat stroke, there's probably going to be another one. So automatically the curve goes up 1, because if someone got a heat stress, something didn't happen as planned. Let's see. So for the when you're doing your FEL calculation, you round. Doesn't say if you round up or not, or actually it does. Yeah, because so 85.1 rounds up to 86. So because it's a 0.1 and you don't normally round up of 0.1 to the next up, so just think always round up. Oh, actually right here. To use the FEL, you round to the next higher whole number. So that makes it kind of easy, because you know in real rounding it's up or down depending on what the decimal is. When you're doing your fill, it's always up. Let's see. And that's just telling you, yep, round up, because 85.1 and 85.8 would be exactly the same. Here's some, and then this part of the instruction was kind of weird to me because it talks about fuel combustion gas. So fuel combustion gas is really bad for you. It causes vasodilation, which again puts you more at risk for heat stuff. If you're working in vapors, this is stuff to look out for. Eyes watering or burning, difficulty breathing, tingling or numbness, general sensation of mild alcohol intoxication without drinking. I think at any point in life, if you feel drunk without drinking, you should immediately probably see somebody about that, because yeah, being drunk when you're not sounds kind of weird. Something that definitely ain't right. And this instruction has all the fail curves, but honestly, I'm not sure what I could really take notes on for this. It's just a chart. I'm not even sure how important this would really be to know. Again, yeah, if you can remember this, you should not be in the Navy. You should be working on like a rocket ship or bombs or something, because I don't know how anyone could remember this series of numbers, or this one, or any of that. Let's see, use of the WBGT meter. This might be important, being the HM1, how to use it. I only saw a few things that I think maybe kind of like quick prop trivia to know. So there's two type of wet bulb globe thermometer, the RSS 220 and the Q-Stemp 48N. They get calibrated every 3 years, so your WBG every 3 years. Let's see, there again, there's your WBGT Formula. Because it showed up multiple times in the chapter, maybe it is important to know. Maybe I just don't remember ever seeing it, or I guess as you saw my profile sheet video, I only got 60% right on the last exam, so maybe it's something I didn't see. So WBGT 0.1 times dB plus 0.7 times WB plus 0.2 times GT. So 0.1 dry, 0.2 globe, 0.7 wet, and it just add the three numbers. Let's see, and here's some more number stuff. Where's it at? Four. So for the portable wet globe, you got to wait 5 minutes for the initial dry bulb reading, and then you got to wait another 3 minutes. So 5 for initial, 3 for subsequent. Similar to earlier in the instruction where it said 10 for initial, 5 for moving around. And that's really it that I thought was important. A lot of the rest of it just tells you a little bit more about the AHSS. Probably if I was on a ship, or if I've been on a ship, this would make a lot more sense to me. If anyone in here is like super salty, please let me know what you know about this stuff. I admittedly did breeze through a lot of this because I didn't see it as too pertinent, too relevant. But if there's super important stuff in there, please let me know. Let the shipmates know, whoever sees it. But again, thank you guys for enjoying my video. I hope you enjoyed it. Again, my name is Ryan. This is another HM1 in 2021. Have a good rest of your night. I think tomorrow I'm going to try to post the last 5100.19 Foxtrot.